Hey people, Shinobi no Kami here. In this fanfic after the Kyuubi attack, Naruto was adopted by Kakashi Hatake, an ex-Anbu captain and a student of Naruto's father Minato. How will this change the little Naruto's life? Will he be spared from the villagers' hatred or will things be the same as in the original timeline? Watch to know. Before we begin, please use the like button and share the video if you enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts in the comments section. Now, let's roll the intro. Chapter 36. After the battle. Kakashi heard Naruto and he tried to move his arm but he was too close. The boy wasn't moving all that much so he knew that he had to limit it. He was still 2 feet away and slightly moved his hand. It wasn't much but he had been aiming for a higher target at any rate. If he had been any closer he couldn't have been able to move his arm, plus he cut off the flow of chakra to his arm and hand, but that would only lessen the damage. The build-up in the jutsu alone was enough to be fatal if he hit a vital spot. He didn't know why his son was telling him to stop, but he trusted that he had a good reason. So with the last second his Chidori hit the young boy in his shoulder. He heard the boy cry out in pain as he grabbed Kakashi's wrist. He was surprised how much strength the boy had in his arms. "I can't let you kill him," the boy said to him, giving him a small smile. "I'm sorry, Zabuza-sama, I'm no longer any use to you." "Haku," the man behind him simply said as Kakashi looked at the boy who was starting to fall. This Haku person still kept a grip on his arm even as he was falling down. He had to admit it was impressive how much willpower the young boy had. Kakashi was finally able to pull his arm free as he grabbed the boy before he fell into the water. There was a groaning sound as the boy was still alive, if only barely. "Dad." Naruto ran over to the body of water. He only got to the edge as he didn't know how the adults were standing on the water like they were. "Naruto," Kakashi said in a tone that demanded an explanation. Naruto heard that tone all the times he got caught with a prank, only now it was more serious. He knew that his father would demand a very good explanation as to why he was told to stop other than Haku getting in the way. I didn't want him hurt. He's like me, I think," Naruto told him, and Kakashi's head went back a little at that as he looked down at the bleeding boy. "Stupid kid," Zabuza said, still stuck in Kurenai's genjutsu. "Don't say that about him." Naruto yelled out at the man. "Don't you care at all? He lived for you, his only dream was for you, he didn't even have a dream of his own. He said that he was alone and you took him in, you trained him. Don't you care for him at all?" Naruto shouted at the man. He couldn't help but think on his own life. After he had learned that his parents had died and that Kakashi had taken him in. How could this man who had done the same feel nothing at all for the boy? He just didn't understand it. Yes, he knew that Haku had done just moments ago, but isn't that the life of a ninja? You fought your enemies. But Naruto couldn't hate, not after seeing those eyes. He remembered those eyes from the mirror when he was lonely, before he met Hinata. The boy just seemed too much like him to hate, and he couldn't believe that this Zabuza just didn't care, even a little. "Look at him, you bastard!" Naruto yelled out. "He's there bleeding, broken and dying for you. Everything he's done seems to have been for you and never himself. He thinks he's just a tool. Ninja are the tools of war, kid," Zabuza said, looking at the boy under him, watching the water turn red from the blood. "Bullshit," Naruto said. "We're people first, damn it. We have feelings, we have hopes, and above all we have dreams. You have a dream, he told me that much, so does that make you a tool? Is the fact that his only dream in life is for yours make him less human?" "Shut up," the killer said, closing his eyes. He saw all the times he was with Haku, the day he met the starving and cold little boy that was most likely about to die in a day. He took that boy in, and yes, he first saw him as a tool for his own uses. As he trained the boy he couldn't help but be proud at the boy. His skills were above anyone he had seen. The boy was truly gifted, and adding in that bloodline for ice he could be nearly unstoppable. If only the boy's heart wasn't so soft. He had spent years training and living with Haku, trying to raise enough money to buy him a security from Hunter Nins and to kill his Kage again. Over all the years he tried to think of the boy as nothing but a tool to be used. But looking at him now, why did he feel this pain in his chest? He had never felt this before, so why now and why with Haku? It didn't make any sense for him to feel this way about a tool. Kakashi, I can't hold him forever, Kurenai said to him. Kakashi looked at the boy and then at the man. He saw something in those eyes that shouldn't be in the eyes of a killer. Then he cast a look at Naruto and saw the pained look in his son's eyes, and beyond him he could just start to make out the still forms on the ground behind him, and he felt his own chest tighten at that. This wasn't supposed to happen on this mission. He knew there were dangers, but this wasn't supposed to happen. He suddenly remembered the face of Obito, half crushed in rock. He looked back at Naruto as a silent thing passed between them. Let him go. What? Kurenai shouted. He's nearly out of chakra and so am I, Kakashi said, closing his eye. Even if he did try something, you'd kill him. He faced Zabuza as their eyes met. Take your soldier and go, there has been enough blood today. My contract is still valid, you know, the man warned Kakashi. I know, and we'll be ready for you, he said back as he picked up Haku. Kurenai couldn't believe this was happening, but Kakashi was the senior ranked Jonin. She reluctantly let go of her jutsu and the large man walked free. She watched as he slowly went up to Kakashi. She waited to see if he would make a move on them or not. Zabuza just picked up Haku and without a word a mist shrouded the two of them as they faded away. I hope you know what you did, Kurenai said coldly to him. He didn't say anything as they walked to the shore. As he looked at Naruto, I hope you know as well, Naruto. Naruto knelt down next to Hinata. She looked almost peaceful, but he felt like his heart was breaking. Back when he was a lonely child with no friends, she had been the person to accept him as a friend. And he failed to protect her. He failed, and she was dead because he wasn't strong enough. She came in to help him and she died along with Sasuke. She shut his eyes, feeling the sting of his tears. I'm sorry, he whispered to her. He had no idea what he was going to say to Neji, to her father, or to Hanabi. He started to pull out the needles to at least clean her up a little. The others watched in silence as Naruto started out and Sakura did the same for Sasuke, seeing him doing it. She too felt her heart breaking. Hinata was a friend of hers and she couldn't stop looking at the boy she had a crush on, lifeless on the ground. Naruto pulled out a needle in her neck and suddenly she jerked. Her eyes snapped open as she gasped for air. Naruto fell back on his ass with a shout, his eyes wide and unbelieving, as did everyone else turned to see the Hyuga girl still alive. Hinata. Naruto shouted out. Naruto-kun, she said weakly. Her whole body hurt for some reason and she couldn't really move. Hinata. Naruto quickly moved over to her as he started to pull out the last of the needles. He was so happy that she was still alive. He heard another gasp and Sakura's shriek as he looked over his shoulder at the other boy coughing and Sakura helping him out. He smiled under his mask as he picked up Hinata slightly to him. I guess he couldn't kill them after all, he thought happily, holding Hinata close to him. Hinata was slowly becoming aware of the world around her. The last thing she remembered was a fight with the masked boy and lots of pain, Naruto holding her, and she blushed a bit, remembering thinking she was dying and nearly telling Naruto her true feelings. She felt a bit better, but still her body ached in places. She felt her face pressed up against something and as her eyes focused she saw orange. It was Naruto's shirt. Naruto is holding me. He's got his arms wrapped around me. She blushed very red as she could almost hear his heart beating in his chest. Hinata-chan, don't ever scare me like that again. I thought I lost you. You have no idea how much you mean to me, he told her gently. That only caused her blush to get even redder as his words hit her. It was also more than she could take and passed out again, only this time with a smile as felt her face against his chest. Hinata-chan. Hinata. Naruto shook her, worried that something was wrong. It was at this time that Kurenai stepped forward. It's okay, she's just passed out. She was so relieved that Hinata was still alive. The little girl was almost like a daughter to her after all this time, and she had seen her grow and get stronger. She was also painfully aware of the young girl's feelings for the masked boy holding her, and she wondered why Hitaki had never told his son that she liked him. She would have to ask him later, but right now she was just glad that the two were alright. I wonder why that boy didn't kill them. She wondered softly to herself. I'm not sure myself, but it seems the boy can't kill his heart, Kakashi said in a pleased tone. He was glad that Naruto's instincts were right in the boy. He hadn't been sure, but Naruto always had a way with people. Sasuke-kun, Sakura said as she helped him up. What happened? He asked. Looks like we won, Sakura said to him, not sure what happened. The last thing she knew in the battle was that strange chakra and the killer intent, unlike anything she had ever felt before. Then some things happened, and when the mist cleared, he and Hinata looked like they had been killed. Damn, you two are lucky that masked guy didn't kill you too, Kiba said, smiling at him. Sasuke grunted as he tried to get up. Sakura tried to help him, but he shrugged her off, saying that he was fine. Sakura frowned as she looked sadly at his back as he walked away, but felt Kiba's hand on her shoulder. Don't let it bother you, Sakura. His pride is just hurt and he's not taking it well, he told her. When they gathered everything up, Naruto said that he would carry Hinata to the village they were going. Of course Kurenai offered, but he flat out refused as he put her on his back and started to carry her along the way. Sakura saw this and she sighed. It looked like Hinata had gotten the boy after all, or at least closer than anyone. She just wished that someone could be like that for her. They walked on to the village, and along the way Hinata woke up slightly. She was wondering what was going on and why it felt like she was moving. She felt something against her chest and what felt like hands on her legs. She blushed as that registered in her mind, and soon she realized that she was being carried. With the blonde hair she could see, she knew it was Naruto. He was carrying her and he was touching her legs. She blushed once more but managed to stay awake. She just let herself enjoy the feeling of Naruto's back. She gave a content sigh as she slowly fell asleep, being carried by him. Finally, it's good to be back home, Tazuna said, looking over his village. Although the other shinobi weren't exactly as thrilled, the place looked like it had once been a prosperous fishing village, but now it looked like it had seen better days. Man, what a dumb, Kiba muttered. Watch it, punk, the old man shouted at him. You should never insult the home of someone when you're a guest, it's bad manners. Besides, one of the reasons I'm building the bridge is to bring back the beauty and pride of my village. Of course, Kurenai said, placing a hand on Kiba's shoulder. You'll have to excuse my student, he's not very good at thinking before speaking. She gave Kiba a look and he flinched a bit under it, knowing that he might get a talking to about learning to watch his mouth. They were led through the village. Looking around as they did, people were wearing very worn clothing. The few stands that were still open had very little to sell and people looked hungry and destitute. Tazuna-san, is this what that Gato man did to your village? Sakura asked the older man, seeing everything. She felt very bad for the people in this village. She had never seen anything close to this, as Konoha was a very prosperous village. The old man nodded, being a bit more serious. Now you see why we need the bridge so much. This used to be a beautiful town before that man came. What you see around you is the results of his work. Everyone looked around and the air was just thick with despair. It was like the soul of the entire village had been ripped out. They went through the town and it only seemed to get worse as they walked on. Eventually they came to an out-of-the-way area and they saw a home there. They walked up to it as Tazuna walked through the front door. Tsunami, I'm home, he called out. A young woman with long dark blue hair and an earthly beauty about her came into the room. She looked happy and relieved to see the old man. She ran up to him and threw her arms around him, hugging him tightly. Father, you had me so worried. It's all right, Tsunami. I managed to get some protection from Konoha. Tazuna moved aside as the two genin teams came in. Oh my, are you all right? Tsunami asked, seeing how they were all banged up from the fight. She couldn't believe that children who looked only a few years older than her own son were put into fights. If you have a room we could use to rest up, that would be most appreciated, Kurenai asked her. Of course, this way, she said, leading them all through the small home. On the second floor they were showed a spare room. There wasn't much and it would get a little cramped with all of them sharing it, but they were tired and they all needed some rest. Naruto placed Hinata on a small bedroll for her. So how are you feeling, Hinata-chan? He asked her. Be better, although I still feel sore all over, she admitted. Thankfully she had some ointments and other stuff with her that she could put on, although she might have to ask Kurenai or Sakura for help, as it would mean to take her shirt off for someone to get the places on her back, and she didn't want Naruto to do it. Well, the mental image of him doing that made her blush very badly, but she knew she'd faint before it got anywhere anyway. So you want me to get you something? Naruto asked her. I'm fine thanks, she smiled up at him. Then she noticed the sad look in his eyes and she stopped smiling. One of the things she loved was his eyes. They were so blue and so full of life and joy that she didn't like to see sadness in them. His eyes weren't meant to be sad or full of hurt. Naruto-kun, what's wrong? It's just that, he trailed off, seeing everyone in the room. He really didn't want to get into this with everyone there. It was just kind of embarrassing and he knew that Kiba would never let him live it down if he got all sappy. He wanted to tell her how scared he was when he thought that she was dead and how much she meant to him. She was one of the closest people in his life and the thought of losing her was terrifying. Can I tell you later? You know, when we're alone. He wants to be alone with me. She thought as her cheeks started to burn up but quickly nodded. Kakashi sighed as he put his tired body up against a wall, sitting down. Using that eye of his really was taking it out of him. He is starting to feel the drain to his body, but at least it wasn't too bad. If he had been on his own he was sure that he would have nothing left. But now he had other things to think about. The genin would need some more training and soon. The only problem was that there was no way to train them in anything major, no time for new techniques, but by the looks of them there was something they could learn. Kurenai, Kakashi said, getting her attention, how far are your students in their chakra training? They're pretty far. They can mold it well enough, although I haven't started on any elemental or shape training. I got them on chakra building exercises to help them expand their supply of chakra as well as increase their stamina. Kakashi nodded his head. Good. I take it they've passed the tree walking. She nodded at him. Okay, then I think we should try water walking. There's a huge supply of that around here, plus they might need to be able to fight on the water if we're pulled onto it, plus they need more chakra control and supply given how good that boy was. So you think they'll be back? Kurenai surmised, although she wasn't surprised by that. I mean, that wound you gave that boy looked pretty serious. Kakashi sighed once more, thinking about it. I missed his heart, but I think I might have hit his lung. There was a lot of blood loss, but the Chidori can also seal off some of the wound from the electricity, but that's a double-edged sword as it burns the inside. The boy was still alive, but he'll need some major medical attention, and if he's strong enough he might live through it, but it could also be touch and go. Kurenai had never really seen Kakashi fight before. During that battle he went from a seemingly lazy jonin and turned into a ninja that had earned his reputation in the ninja world. Everything that Zabuza threw at them, Kakashi just threw it right back at him. Although she wasn't weak, she knew that those two men were stronger than her, and if she had gone up along against Zabuza it wouldn't have been easy to beat him, that is if she could have. It was Kakashi's battling that gave her the time to use her genjutsu skills. It wasn't until that moment that she realized how dangerous it was to be overly specialized in one area. She could manipulate two elements like all jonin had to, but the jutsu list for those were only 2 or 3 for each. Kakashi was rumored to have 1,000 and he always brought back them for the village. It was also rumored that besides the Uchiha, Kakashi had put down more jutsus in the Forbidden Scroll than any other ninja. And now, hearing just how much damage that Chidori of his did and seeing it in action, she realized that under all the false fronts, Kakashi Hatake was one of the most dangerous men she had ever met. She couldn't really read the man and he was a mystery even though she had known him for years. Hey, you okay? Kakashi asked, looking up at her with that lazy expression on his face. Looking at him she couldn't tell just how many masks the man wore in life, but she decided that now wasn't the time to think on the mystery that was Kakashi. Yes, just planning out the training. Oh okay, well I'm going to take a nap, do me a favor and wake me for dinner. Thanks, he said without waiting for an answer and picked out a spot on the ground and just seemed to fall asleep just like that. Kurenai just blinked at him, a bit more confused by the man than ever. Gato's hideout. Zabuza stared down at the form of Haku in that bed. His upper torso was bare as the bandages covered it. He could see the blood stains on it as well. The boy was asleep but looked too pale for his own good. When he got back he ordered the Gato's lackeys to get a doctor. He had just stood there while the doctor worked on the boy. He had already put some new blood into him and closed up the wound as best he could, but the doctor told him the wound was serious. He shoved the doctor out the door, almost throwing him as he said that the boy might not live. He sat in a chair looking at the pale face of the boy that he had been with for years. "You've made me soft, kid," he silently said to him. "I didn't used to feel this way about anyone. I was Zabuza the demon, the man that killed all his friends and comrades, part of the elite 7 swordsmen of the mist. I'm not supposed to have friends or people close to me. You were just supposed to be a tool for my own ends. Then that loud-mouthed brat had to go and open his stupid mouth, he muttered, thinking back to the blonde-haired boy. He made the killer think of all the times he spent with the boy, although he never admitted it, he actually liked the boy. His life had always been a lonely one, but Haku actually filled a void in his life that he never even noticed before. The sudden thought of Haku gone actually hurt, something that surprised him. He thought he had killed his heart years ago, but this boy in the bed had snuck his way in without him noticing. He sighed as he looked at the Senbon needle in his hand. He had practically raised the boy and was the closet he had ever been to someone in all his life. On the one hand, he hated these feelings, he felt weaker for them, and he had left the battlefield instead of fighting to the end. On the other, he felt like if the boy died, a piece of him would die too. He had passed down everything to the boy, all his knowledge, skills and wisdom. It was strange, as in a way it was like the relationship of a father and son, but he never could remember what that was like. He never had a family and he didn't know what it felt like. He had been alone all his life, until he had the boy there, then he hadn't been alone. He sat there lost in his own thoughts and memories, trying to make sense out of the chaos that was warring inside of him. Things had been so easy before this, and now everything seemed completely upside down. Chapter 37, Plans and Preparations. The next morning found the ninja teams rested and nearly ready for action. Although Hinata felt better, her body was still stiff, and even Sasuke was feeling it but didn't want to let it show. Kakashi was said he wanted to sleep in a bit more to recover from using his Sharingan, although Kurenai wasn't sure it was because he just wanted to be lazy. She was still having a hard time trying to see through the man when he was putting on an act or if he was serious or not. So eventually they made their way down to the kitchen. It was a tight fit, but they all managed somehow to find a place at the table. Tsunami had done the best she could for all of them, but with the village in such a poor state, finding enough decent food was hard. A lot of the food that you could buy there was little of it, overpriced and not in the best condition either. But she never let it show. After all, she had to keep up hope even in the most hopeless of times. That was why her father was building the bridge, to change things for the better. She looked to see the young children were doing their best to eat and not say anything about the food. Although she did wonder how the short one in the mask seemed to be eating with his mask on, the others around him kept looking as well, but you never saw him take off the mask. Then he noticed her little boy, Inari. He was looking down, not looking at the guests. It broke her heart to see her precious little boy like that. Although she was hurting as well, after his biological father had died it was hard to go on. But then Kaiser came into her life and she learned to love again. He had been such a great man and a greater father to Inari. Then she lost yet another husband to that man Gato. He took one of the best things out of their life and made her child watch as well as the village as he tortured and murdered him. She still cried herself to sleep at night when no one was looking. It just hurt so much not to have him around. Sometimes it was easier to ignore the past and the pain with it, but she had loved him so much it was too much to just forget he ever lived. She went back to putting away the dishes so no one would see the tear falling from her face. I'm telling you guys, we're going to make sure that bridge gets built. Naruto proclaimed. After seeing the entire town, the Genins were motivated to help this place out. This was the kind of thing that Naruto had hoped he would do, saving people and protecting the innocent. He knew that not all ninja jobs were like that, but that was why he liked this so much. Akamaru barked out something. Yeah, I agree boy, Kiba grinned. This place could use the help. Shino nodded too. Even though our mission is to protect our client, the end result of his work is a good bonus that comes with our work. I must admit that seeing the condition in this village, I can say that letting such a force to run rampant would only spread. Eventually, if he's not stopped, he could bring his practices into the Fire Country and many others. So you want to stop him too, huh? Kiba smirked. Normally Shino was very logical and put his emotions aside, but he guessed that even all of the suffering of this village had to get through to his teammate. Shino gave him a pointed look. When dealing with a cancer you should cut it out before it spreads, and from what I can see this Gato person is the definition of a cancer. Kiba gave him a weirded out look. Man, that was pretty cold. Well, he's got the right idea. Naruto smiled. We protect the old man, and if that Gato jerk shows up we just kick his ass. Yeah, and I'm sure the village will be better off, Sakura said. Hell yeah, we'll kick his ass and any of his followers and any other ninja he has, Shanaru. Inner Sakura shouted out, fisting her hand into the air in Sakura's mind. Why do you even bother? Inari said quietly looking at the table. Huh? Naruto asked, he had forgotten that the kid was even there. He had been so quiet when they first had met. You'll all just die anyway. Inari shouted out at them. No one can beat him and you'll all just die too, you should just leave. What the hell do you mean by that? Kiba shouted at the kid. Yeah, Naruto shouted back at the boy. I said you'll all just die. What's not to get? Inari said. Like hell. Naruto stood up slamming his hands onto the table. What makes you so special? Inari said locking his eyes onto Naruto's. I'm Naruto Hitaki. Naruto said proudly. I'm the son of Kakashi Hitaki, the copy ninja of Konoha, grandson of the famous White Fang, Tsukumo Hitaki. I'm going to be the future Hokage of the village and make my family proud of who I am. I never give up, I never go back on my word either. That's who I am. So what? Inari said back. Gato will kill you all and even your dad. That was going too far for Naruto. He could take things said about him, he had been doing that all his life. But when people said things about his friends or his family that was going too far, he reached over and grabbed the boy by his collar and he could see the sudden shock and fear in the boy's eyes. Don't you ever say anything like that to me again. He growled out. My dad is one of the best ninja in the world and there is no way some weak punk like Gato can hurt him. He had to go and hire an A-class missing nin to do his dirty work and we sent him running. Although Naruto knew that it hadn't been that easy and both Kurenai and Kakashi had to go all out just to stay alive against him, but that wasn't the point. When push came to shove they beat him, that Haku boy, and those two brothers earlier on their way here. No matter what this guy threw at them they were not backing down from this mission. Naruto, came the cold command of Kurenai. He looked over at the Jonin as she was giving him a look that told him to put an end to this. Naruto sighed and released the boy and sat down glaring at the table, a shadow covering his eyes. Inari ran off somewhere else as Hinata looked at her best friend worried. She had only rarely seen Naruto act like that and only when it was in the defense of those close to him. Man, what's with the kid? Kiba muttered looking in the direction that Inari ran off to. Don't let my grandson get to you, it's just hard with what happened. Tazuna sighed taking a drink. Why, what happened? Sakura asked him, but the old man didn't answer. If this is important should you tell, but if it's not then you don't have to, Kurenai told the old man. She could tell from how tense the daughter was and the look on the old man's face that this was a hard subject. Tazuna thought about it and sighed. It's not a pretty story but it's how the village lost its hope to Gato. He told them how things had used to be. He spoke of the old days with a light in his eyes. He told of how his daughter had met a good fisherman. He was like life itself, and to Inari he was a hero to the boy. Then the man Gato came and slowly started to put a stranglehold onto the village. The only one that would stand up to him was Kaiza. But Gato's men were too many and they beaten him and had dragged him to be executed in front of the whole village. Inari had watched his father, his hero, being brutalized and then killed in front of him. After that day all hope in the village died. Gato had taken the best of them and it had crushed their spirits. Hearing the story they could only sympathize with them even more. Sakura and Hinata were near tears at the thought of something like this happening. Kiba had his fists clenched tightly into balls as Akamaru let out a small growl at the emotions running in the room. Shino didn't look like he was reacting, but Kiba had known him long enough to pick up on the subtle way he was sitting that he could see that Shino didn't like the sounds of what happened either. Sasuke looked away, although there was a small part that kept thinking back to his clan the night his brother killed them all. He had seen that happen as well. Although the boy having only one parent die was nothing in comparison, Sasuke still knew a bit of what the boy was going through. He had seen the anger and pain in there. The only thing that Inari didn't have was that hatred that Sasuke had in him. The boy's pain had crippled him while Sasuke knew that his own hatred kept him going. Well then maybe we should use this moment to help motivate your training then. Everyone looked to see Kakashi resting up against the doorway to the kitchen. He had heard the story himself and with this he could use it to motivate them a bit more. He just wished that they could do more training than what he had in store for them, but time wasn't on their side. Later, after some asking, Kakashi was able to find the perfect place for their next step of the training. It was good that both students had learned how to walk on trees, but now they needed to take that to the next step. They would have to learn how to fight on water if it was needed, given that they could easily be attacked near it. Also it would help them to conserve the chakra they use and increase their capacity for it. Maybe even sharpen their fighting skills a bit, but fight now it was one thing at a time. They came to a large river. It was thankfully a gentle one, which was good, as trying this on a raging river wouldn't be the smartest thing. Alright then, since you all know tree walking, we'll be doing the more advanced version of that today, Kakashi said in a happy tone. With this it will improve chakra control as well as increase it as well. Plus you'll be able to fight on more surfaces. You mean like how you and Kurenai-sensei were when fighting earlier on that lake? Naruto asked. Kakashi nodded. Just like that, only this is much more difficult to do. All of you will have to spread out your chakra, but unlike on a tree you can't keep it steady. For a surface like what, where the surface is in constant change, you have to constantly adapt. That sounds kind of hard, Kiba muttered as he remembered how hard the tree walking was. It is a first, Kurenai told them, but with practice you'll eventually get to the point where you'll be able to do it without even thinking. Alright then, let's get this started. Naruto smirked as he started to run for the water. Kakashi sighed. Naruto, just remember to stay in the shallow end at first until you get the hang of it. In fact, that goes for the rest of you. The genin and one ninja dog went to the water to start on their training as Kakashi and Kurenai watched. I wish we had more time, she told the other jonin. Kakashi nodded to Kurenai's point, but it was the best they could do at the moment. I'm more worried about the next battle. If Haku lives, he'll be very injured, and we don't know how many more ninja that Gato has hired. Although I don't think there could be more, as someone like Zabuza doesn't come cheap. But we should be prepared in any case. They continued to watch as they gave out certain advice to their students on how to get a better handle on things. Shino and Sasuke were doing fairly well, although Kiba and Naruto were having the most trouble. It was Hinata and Sakura that were doing the best so far, but given they had the best control out of them all, they weren't all that surprised. Both jonin continued on with the training for the entire day until it was getting late, and by sunset called it a day. Later that night, Hinata had left everyone behind as she made her way to the river that she had seen earlier in the day. She needed to train more. Even though Kurenai and Kakashi had said she was improving, she felt it wasn't enough. She needed to be stronger, and it was time to try and continue on with the training that she had been doing in secret for a while now. Ever since that day she copied down those water jutsu moves from that scroll she had helped Naruto to steal. She had been sneaking in elemental training. She had kept trying to mold water when she could. Sometimes it was after missions and training she would do this. It was very tiring at times, since she had training with her team, D-class missions, and then training with her family in her fighting style. After those times she was so tired, but still she tried to push herself. She even had to sneak in a few soldier pills at times to get through the day, although he was careful not to overdo it. If people found out how hard she was pushing herself, then they might get worried, but some days she did take it easy. But that battle on the bridge she hadn't done much, and she had worried Naruto a lot as well. She had been a bit thankful that they had been so busy that they hadn't had a chance to talk. She was worried about what to say to him. She was so embarrassed about what she had nearly said to him when she had thought that she was dying. But now she wasn't sure if she could admit it a second time. All the old fears and doubts came back to plague her. She pushed those aside. She had to continue her training now and not focus on her feelings for Naruto. She needed to be stronger this time around, and it was time to learn how. She placed a hand in the water and could feel how cold it was. She quickly scanned the area with her eyes, and so far there was no one near her, which was good. The last thing she wanted was someone to catch what she was going to do. She was going to have to train in water, and given the cold she would get sick easily. So she sighed and started to take off her clothing and placing them neatly on a nearby rock. Hinata wasn't the only one that wanted some extra training that night either. Just out of range of her eyes, Naruto had the same idea as her. Tutu felt like he should have been stronger on that fight. He couldn't even had done any of his wind jutsus in that battle. If he had used the wind armor, then the Senbons would have gone off him and hit Sasuke or Hinata. Plus it was still not perfected as well. He could get it around his hand and arms really good, but when it came to a full body protection it was unstable. Then there was the wind slash, but the two wasn't strong enough. He could hit a person and cut them, but that move was supposed to cut through solid rock, even metal at times. So after dinner he had ran out to the woods again, only this time for some elemental training. He started off with making shadow clones to help him in this. He told 5 to start with chakra control exercises with running up and down the trees, as 10 were to try using that method he got showed by Asuma once on how to cut a leaf with that kind of chakra. 5 were to keep using wind armor until they were so exhausted that they dispelled from lack of chakra. Another 5 were doing the same with the wind blade too. For him, he was going to try and get his grandfather's sword to start working. Like he had told his dad, when he used the demon's power he saw the blade turn red, but he wanted to do it on his own. The fox's chakra was hard for him to control, not only the power itself, but he knew that he was a bit out of control too. He looked at the family sword in the moonlight as his clones were training. This sword belonged to a great ninja that even though he knew the full story, he was still proud of the elder Hitaki. He couldn't look down on anyone that didn't abandon their friends. "I promise you, Grandpa, I'll use your blade to make you proud," Naruto thought as he started with a few warm-ups with the blade. After an hour Naruto was out of clones as they had all tired themselves out of existence. Thankfully they didn't all dispel at the same time, but now he was feeling one of the after effects of it. He decided that he needed a drink, but when he went to get one from a canteen he found it dry. "Damn it, must have used the last of it up," he muttered to himself. It was a long walk back to the house and he didn't like going back thirsty. Then he remembered the river they trained on. It looked clean enough, so he figured he might as well get a drink from there. He eventually found it. Although he had gotten turned around a few times, he never was good with directions in the day, and at night it was even worse as it was harder to spot landmarks. But when he heard the sounds of a river he just followed that. When he got to it the moon was covered by a cloud, so he eased his way, not wanting to fall in and get wet. He found a few large rocks and the sound was very close, so he got on one of them and reached down over the other side and felt the cold water there. He grinned as he put his canteen down to get it filled when he noticed another sound there on the river. He tensed, wondering if it was those ninja again or Gato and his people. He stayed still, not even moving to give away his location, waiting for the moon to get back out again. The clouds slowly moved away from the moon and in its light he paused. His eyes widened at the sight he was looking at. There on the river itself there seemed to be someone who looked like they were dancing. The movements were so fluid and graceful, and from the figure it was definitely a girl, a very well developed one with a great figure too. He gulped as his mouth was dry for another reason. It was like a vision before him. She was so amazing. It was also then that he noticed that the girl had no clothing on. He felt a nosebleed starting up, but he couldn't look away. The moonlight showed off parts of her skin and he could tell that she didn't have anything on. He hadn't seen any of the really naughty parts, but he had seen enough. I shouldn't be staring, should I? He thought to himself, feeling his heart hammering in his chest. I mean, yeah, I looked at my dad's books from time to time, and yeah, I got that sexy jutsu and know all that stuff, but something seems like I should watch this. Oh god, she's just so hot though. He tried not to groan at that thought. He wanted to see her face to see if she was just as pretty as the rest of her. He wanted to know who this water nymph was. After he gave up on Sakura he realized that he didn't have his sights set on anyone else, but this girl was just amazing. He never looked at Sakura the same way he was looking at her. Was this girl someone from the village? But then how was she on the water like that? Was she a spirit or maybe some traveling nin from another village? He had to know and he got up to talk to her. It was a calculated risk given her lack of clothing, but he really needed to know who she was. He just about opened his mouth when he slipped on some moss that had been on the stone. He yelled out as he crashed fact first into the water. After some thrashing about he got to his knees and coughed a few times. Sorry about that, I just wanted to know who you were. Naruto blinked a few times, looking up to see no one there. What the? He got up and looked around but couldn't see anyone. It had to have been real, right? He hadn't hallucinated or anything, had he? He looked around for a bit but found no sign of the mystery girl. He was also feeling very cold now as the water was soaking him. With a sigh and a heavy heart he made his way back to the house. All the way there he couldn't get that girl out of his mind. He wanted to know so bad. He quickly took a change of clothing and put his wet ones out on a clothesline to dry off and went to sleep. He was so tired that he fell asleep almost instantly, but his dreams were haunted by that beautiful dancer on the waters. Not long after he had fell asleep, Hinata had made her way back to the home as she nervously dried off a bit and went to sleep as well, hoping that whoever had seen her on that river hadn't gotten a look at her face. She was so embarrassed that someone had caught her. She had quickly hid as soon as she heard the splash and had waited for that person to leave. She groaned, hoping that no one would know of her little embarrassment in the morning. Chapter 38. Calm before the storm. The next morning Naruto woke up and went to breakfast lost in thought. All he could think about was that girl he saw in the water. Hell, he had even dreamed about her last night. She was constantly running through his mind. He had to know who it was. The others were starting to notice how quiet Naruto was all throughout breakfast. Those that knew him well knew that there was something going on with him, but they weren't sure what. Kakashi gave his son a glance, seeing the look on his face. He was sure that Naruto wasn't angry or anything. He actually looked very deep in thought. Naruto had eaten without saying a word. Hinata had offered to help Tsunami out with the dishes, as there was so many of them it was only proper. She cast a worried look over at Naruto as well. She was worried about him and wondered what had happened to make him so silent. While his friends were trying to figure out how to approach him, the young blonde suddenly looked up at the old bridge builder. "Hey, old man. Yeah, what do you want, shorty?" Tazuna asked him. "Are there any female ninjas in the village or heard of any passing by?" The masked genin asked. "Huh, why the hell would you ask that?" he asked the boy. "'Cause I think I saw one last night at the river," he told him while everyone stopped to listen in. Although one was rigid from pure shock as Hinata's eyes widened so large that they looked like they would fall out of her head. Her heart was hammering in her chest as last night came rushing back to her and to the mysterious person that had seen her. But had that person been Naruto all along? Her face was growing very red at the moment and she felt like she wanted to crawl under a rock and die. "You think you saw a kunoichi?" Kakashi asked him, thinking that maybe Gato did have another ninja up his sleeve. "Yeah, I mean, who else can move on water?" Naruto told him. "Wait, weren't we all supposed to be asleep last night?" Sakura asked, remembering that they all went to bed at roughly the same time. Naruto forgot about his little midnight training session, and seeing the look he was getting from his dad, he knew better than to not lie. Besides, he sucked at lying. It was just a skill he was never very good at when it came to himself. With his pranks he could do it, but when it was to get himself out of trouble, not so much. "I think you better start from the beginning," Kakashi told him in an even tone. Naruto ended up confessing to sneaking out for some extra training. He didn't really go into how much he was training, only he was brushing up on his skills. He got to the point where he had gotten thirsty and had gone for some water, and that's when he saw that girl. She was just dancing on the water, Naruto said in a dreamy-like way, thinking back. "I mean, she was so graceful. Did you get a good look at her?" Kiba asked, getting more interested in the story now. "Well, I didn't see her face, unfortunately," Naruto said, disappointed about that. "But man, she had one hell of a figure. I mean, great legs, hourglass figure that was starting to show, and she was very well developed." "What, was she naked or something?" Kiba laughed at how much he seemed to get. "Oh yeah, she was," Naruto grinned behind his mask. This caused several reactions. Kiba's mouth hung open in shock. Kakashi gave out a perverted giggle like he was reading his books. Sakura and Kurenai were the only ones not really amused, as Tsunami decided to cover her child's ears from this. The boy was too young to hear this kind of stuff. Tazuna, although seemed interested in the story, Shino and Sasuke didn't really have much reaction, but it was Hinata who no one could see, and it was a good thing, she thought. If she wanted to crawl under a rock and die before, she really wanted to do it now. "You serious?" Kiba asked him. "Hell yeah," Naruto told his friend. "I mean, she was amazing. I've never seen a girl like her before. I just wish I knew who she was. I can't get her out of my mind." "So then what happened?" Kakashi asked, smirking. "I fell into the water," Naruto muttered. "When I came back up, she was gone." There was pure silence in the room at that before Kiba hit Naruto on the head. "What the hell was that for?" Naruto shouted at him. "You idiot, you most likely hit your head and it was all just a dream," Kiba told him. "There's no way such a pretty girl was a dream," Naruto told him. "Besides, usually the girls in my dreams I can see their faces, so this had to be real." "Yeah, whatever," Kiba said, getting up, feeling bored now. "Come on Akamaru, let's go for a walk before training." Everyone else started to get up and leave as well, while Naruto was insisting that it really did happen. Hinata breathed out a sigh of relief at that. She was mortified that Naruto had seen her naked while training last night, but there was a part of her that secretly liked with how much he seemed attracted to her body. But then why didn't he notice her before now? She looked down at the coat she always wore. It was bulky and hid her form. She never was very comfortable with her physical body, thinking she was very plain looking, but then she thought back to just how much Naruto was going on about her and it made her starting to wonder. Later that day, it had been another long training day for Naruto, more water walking, but the teams were also training and working together as well. Mainly they would be paired into twos from each team and mixed up so that they could get a decent idea of how each other person fought. After all that and a little side training as well, he was feeling tired. Plus Naruto was still thinking about that girl he had seen last night. He couldn't get that image out of his mind and it was starting to drive him up the wall. He couldn't think that he had just imagined it like Kiba had said. So lately when he was in the village he kept looking at the girls trying to see if they matched what he saw. So far there wasn't any matches and it had another effects too, mainly girls blushing with how he was looking at them to others ending up slapping him thinking he was being a pervert by checking them out for some reason. At any rate he was tired and parts of his face felt sore too from a few slaps. He was thankful for the mask at this point as they hid the red marks he was feeling on his skin. At any rate he was just going to the guest room he shared with the male members when he stopped hearing someone crying. He moved silently over to the door and opened it lightly. What Naruto saw was the little boy Inari who was holding something and crying. Ever since the teams had gotten here, the boy had been a major pain, but at the moment he couldn't help but feel something for the boy. He silently walked up behind the boy. It wasn't hard to with the kid. He looked over the boy's shoulder and noticed it was a picture of him with a man. Both were smiling and looked happy. Naruto had seen all the pictures in the house with a certain figure cut out of them and he guessed that was the missing person in the photos. So that's your dad, huh? Naruto said, scaring Inari. The younger boy jumped and tried to hide the picture, but Naruto was quicker and took it as he looked at it more closely. Give that back, Inari yelled at him. Why? So you can hide it away and pretend he never existed like it seems everyone else in this village has. Shut up, you don't know anything. You come into this country saying you'll change things but you can't, no one can. Naruto didn't say anything as he went to looking at the picture. He looks like a good person, you both look really happy in this. Somehow I doubt he would want to see you crying like this. Inari snatched back the photo. You don't know anything. You keep saying that but you're wrong, Naruto said to him as he gave a quick look behind him. He knew that he shouldn't say anything, but the boy needed to know that he did understand him in a way. You see, Naruto said looking at the boy, I know what it's like to lose family. Inari looked at him for a moment. Your mom. Inari figured that since Kakashi was his father it would have to be his mother, but he still didn't understand why Naruto thought that he could understand him. Inari's father had been seen as a hero to the village, but then Inari's hero had been murdered right in front of him. I lost both my birth parents, Naruto said him, and he could see the surprise and confusion in the younger boy's face. Kakashi adopted me, all I have of my parents are their names, a picture and something else. My mother died giving birth to me and my father, he died protecting our village. He was looked at as the great hero for our village too. Yeah, but he died. Heroes don't die, Inari said. Who says they don't die? Naruto asked him. In my village there is a monument to all the heroes of the village who died. They're mortal just like everyone else, but it's what they do that makes them heroes. My father died protecting our village. He stood up against a monster that was attacking our village and only he was the one that could kill it. Naruto knew that he couldn't say exactly what happened, but he could get it as close as he could. It was strange, this was the first he really talked about what his father had done. He talked with Kakashi a few times about it, but usually he only asked what his birth parents had been like. He never really talked about how his father had given up his life and his soul to seal a demon in his own son. It was kind of sad, since even in death Naruto would never know his father, as Minato's soul was forever in the Shinigami's stomach. In a way it was like laying down a weight that he hadn't even known had been on his shoulders. My father did die, but what he did lasts forever. If he hadn't done what he had done, my village wouldn't even be here. His actions saved many lives and my village will continue to live on because of it too. That's what makes a hero sometime. It's the sacrifices that a hero makes for those that he loves, those that are important to him even in the face of death. Your father died for his village, the only thing that's different is that the village let him die for nothing. Your father acted like a hero and this place threw him away like he meant nothing. Naruto said seriously, and Inari looked up at him as though he had been hit across the face. He must have loved you, he fought for you, your mom, your grandfather and for everyone in this village, but what pisses me off is how this whole village just let it be for nothing. He gave everything for this village and they gave nothing back. But you know what? I may not know him, but I won't let his sacrifice be for nothing, and neither will anyone else who's with me." Inari didn't say anything as he just looked at the picture of his father. Naruto turned around to go out of the room but stopped for a brief moment. Maybe it's time to stop being a crybaby and start fighting back. Naruto decided to get some air after his talk with Inari, so he went to the roof, but he was surprised to find someone already there, sitting on the top looking over the water as the sun was setting. He walked over to the person and sat down gently. "Hey there, Hinata-chan," he said quietly. The girl nearly jumped surprised. "Oh, Naruto-kun, I didn't notice you." "Hey, well, it has been a bit busy lately," he grinned at her as he looked back to the setting sun. "It's kind of nice." Hinata gave a small smile and nodded as she looked at the setting sun. "You remember that time we sat on your porch when we were kids? I think it was after your birthday and we were drinking something that your mom made," Naruto said, all of a sudden remembering that day. They sat just like they are now, only drinking as they watched the sun set that day. Hinata thought back and smiled at the memory. She too remembered that day. Those were simpler times back when her mother was still alive and she and Naruto played together nearly every day and went to school together. She missed those days, and most of all she missed how they had been together all those times. Ever since they were put on genin teams she hadn't seen as much of him. In fact, this mission they were on was the most they had spent together in a very long time. "I was thinking," Naruto said, getting Hinata's attention, "things aren't the same as we were before we made genin. I know my dad and the other adults told me the differences in how ninja missions were, but until I thought you were dead, the reality never set in. I thought I lost you and it really hurt." Naruto looked at the setting sun, lost in his own thoughts. "All I was thinking about was that I wouldn't see you again, and I kept thinking back to all the great times we had. I remember the first time we met in the park and you were hiding behind your mom's legs." Naruto-kun," Hinata said, embarrassed at that. Naruto chuckled. "Sorry, but it was really funny. I'm glad you're not so shy anymore. But anyways, you're my closet friend I have and I don't want to lose you, Hinata-chan." Hinata blushed as she smiled a bit, looking at her hands as she fiddled with her fingers. It was nice to hear how much she meant to him, although she did wish she meant a bit more, but for her knowing how important she was made her feel happy. "So, what were you going to say to me earlier?" Naruto asked her, remembering when he had thought she was dying. "Back when Haku put all those Senbon needles into you." Hinata nearly jumped as she went wide-eyed and blushed madly red. She had forgotten all about that. She had nearly confessed her true feelings for him and now he was asking her for what she hadn't finished. She was starting to panic now. She couldn't just tell him how she felt. She knew that he thought of her as his best friend and it might freak him out. Plus, after all these years she was still so very shy. "Hinata?" he asked, moving his face right in front of hers. They were now mere inches from each other's faces and Hinata's entire face turned a deep red. "Are you okay?" He placed his hand on her forehead to see if she was running a fever. She did feel a little warm. Hinata on the other hand had something snap. She couldn't take it and the pressure to tell him and not tell him broke. She pulled back but too much and went falling. Naruto quickly grabbed her but her weight pulled him with her. Thankfully they were on a small flat patch of the roof so they didn't fall over the side. But what happened now was that Hinata had instinctively pulled on Naruto for support. Naruto came forward and landed on top of her, but that wasn't all. Like what happened with Sasuke, Naruto's mouth landed on Hinata's. Both young teens lay there completely shocked. Naruto couldn't believe what he had just done. His mouth, although was covered by his mask, didn't mean that he was technically kissing his best friend. Hinata's mind was nearly gone at this point. For so long she had had fantasies of this moment. Of Naruto over her and kissing her just like this. Well, not exactly, but this was the closest she had ever come to living out one of her dreams. She half closed her eyes, wishing that this moment would never stop. Her hands tightened a bit more on his clothing. She was feeling so lightheaded and happy at this moment. Naruto finally jerked back, looking down at her shocked and scared. "Oh man, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that." Naruto blinked a few times when Hinata didn't say anything. "Ah, Hinata-chan, are you okay?" Looking down he could see that Hinata had her eyes closed. She had on a light blush on her cheeks and a smile on her face. She was mumbling something that he couldn't make out as well. He knew that Hinata had fainting spells for the longest time, and a part of him was hoping that she wouldn't get mad at him for accidentally kissing her like that. Well, this is new, Kakashi said from behind them, making Naruto jump in shock. I came up to get you two and here you are. Since when did you two become an item? We're not, Naruto said, although he was blushing under his mask. I just fell on her. Kakashi had a look on his face that clearly said he didn't believe it. Well, just remember the hints from my books but nothing with the adult stuff. You two aren't old enough for that and I'm too young to be a grandfather and her father will kill you if you tried anything. We're not doing anything, Naruto shouted at him. Kakashi just gave that perverted giggle of his. Oh sure, but you might want to hurry. I don't think Kurenai will enjoy this scene as much as me, you know she feels about Hinata. Naruto paled at the thought of what Kurenai would do to him if she thought he was taking advantage of Hinata like this. He had learned very early on that women were scary when mad, and especially those trained as a ninja, that opened up all kinds of doors. He looked down at Hinata and sighed. He would have to carry her down and try and sneak her into one of the rooms. He really didn't want anyone to notice because he would have to answer a lot of uncomfortable questions. He picked her up bridal style and he looked down at her peaceful face. He hoped that she wouldn't be pissed at him when she woke up. Then to his surprise she shifted in his arms and buried herself into his chest. He felt himself blush deep red and tried not to think of how soft her lips seemed through his mask and wondered how they felt without it. He shook his head. Bad thoughts. This is Hinata, your friend since you were kids. You do not think of your best friend in that way. At least that's what he kept telling himself while he carried her off the roof. Gato's hideout. Gato wasn't a patient man. He wasn't a lot of things actually, but patience was something he had lacked for a long time. It had been a week and he was getting sick and tired of his hired ninja playing nursemaid to that little boy of his. He didn't understand why the man was wasting so much time and effort. The boy had barely woken up at all, and with all the money the ninja was spending on doctors and medicine, he was starting to think that this ninja was too expensive. Beside the huge fee he had already partially paid for, the medical bills that Zabuza was putting on his bill to Gato was nearly equal to the second half of the payment that they had agreed to for this job. It was looking like his investment of the ninja wasn't paying off. He walked into the room that Zabuza had taken over since his return a week ago. Gato also walked in with a few of his hired men as well, just in case. What the hell are you still doing here? Gato demanded, seeing the ex-mist ninja at the boy's side. You should have killed that old man days ago, but here you are still caring for this weakling. Zabuza turned his head and the look he gave Gato made the small man take a small step back and made his guards slightly reach for their weapons. Although Zabuza's massive sword was leaning against a wall, the man's reputation did warrant them to be careful. Gato recovered himself and moved to the other side of the bed to keep out of the man's reach. He looked at the still form on the bed in contempt. This is costing me too much money and time. I thought you were some hardcore killer, so why are you babying this failure? Just kill the kid and get rid of him and kill the old man, is that so hard? Zabuza glared at the shorter man. Haku is mine to do with as I please. If he is to die, that will be up to me and not up to you. As for the old man, he's got 2 teams protecting him, and even someone of my skills fighting 2 Jonins isn't easy. Especially when one of them is a legend like me, and I had Haku the last time I faced them, so now I'm at a greater disadvantage. I'll deal with it when I'm good and ready and when I have it planned out. Then Zabuza stood up as he towered over Gato. Now get the hell out of here before I decided that you're too annoying to keep that tongue of yours. Gato flinched as he quickly walked to his men and they exited the room. Gato was fuming now. No one talked to him like that. The man was just some pathetic ninja that was on the run, while Gato was on his way up in the world. Scum like Zabuza should know their place in the world. Boss, one of the men asked, seeing their employer's face. It seems that if you want something done right, I'll have to do it another way. Gato said. I hired those ninja to help get rid of that old man when I heard he went to Konoha. But so far it seems that ninja are overrated. I already have that town in the grip of my hand, so maybe it's time to remind them of that. He turned to one of the men. I want you to start hiring to any man that can carry a sword for a special job. Get as many as you can for the usual prices and bring them here. I want the most brutal ones you can get. We're going to bring in an army to that town and wipe those ninja out and the old man as well. Then we'll ensure that the town remembers why they should fear me. Gato then looked to the other man on his other side. I'm going to get more men here, and when I come back we're going to get rid of that trash in there and his boy. I'm tired of this and he's outlived his usefulness. Right boss, He-Man said. What they didn't know was that Zabuza was against the door and he heard every word. His eyes narrowed as it seemed that he now needed new plan before Gato's men came back. He wasn't really too worried about himself, but in the confines of this room he couldn't protect Haku that well. He knew that Haku was still recovering and moving him could be very bad for him, but he had no choice. They couldn't stay here, but where to go? After thinking about it, there was only one way. He hated it, but it looked like he was going to have to swallow his pride, at least for Haku he would. Chapter 39, New Alliances. In Gato's headquarters, one of his lieutenants was marching to the room that the ninja and the boy were using with a large group of hired killers as well. He had gathered up some of the worst types of people he could find as he wanted to make sure that this ninja was killed. They would have to rush him with the best killers he could find. They walked over to the door as their leader stopped. He was a bit nervous after all he had heard the stories about this guy. So is he in there? One of the new guys asked. Yes, and be quick. The food we sent in was laced with a drug that should knock him out, but just in case he didn't take it we need to go in there and hack the big bastard down. Then we can deal with the boy on the bed as well once the big one is taken care of. The lieutenant told them. Oh come on, it's not like he's expecting this and he's only one man. Another said, grinning at the thought of an easy paycheck for this. The group's leader was about to make a comment on that, but he never got that far, as Zabuza's sword suddenly came through the door and right through the leader and two of the others, while cutting the arm off another. Cries of pain and death sounded as the door suddenly split open as Zabuza himself stormed out. He saw the shocked and surprised faces. That was good for him. He liked it when they were scared. He had noticed the drug in the food. Only a genin wouldn't notice that kind of trick. Hell, he had used that trick before himself on certain targets when he couldn't get close, as did many in his line of work. So he had been waiting for this. He had put a chair by the door waiting for the men to come. Once they were close enough he would attack them first to throw them off, then it was a simple matter of hacking the rest to pieces. Which led to this moment as he swung his huge sword, throwing the bodies off the blade and managed to cleave through a few more men. There were shouts and people yelling in total chaos. This was bad for them but good for him. One man against a group was bad odds, but when that group was disoriented it turned the odds in his favor. Come and meet your death, Zabuza yelled as he tore into the group. He showed no mercy as with his large sword gave him a long reach. A couple tried to get under his blade, but a punch here or a kick there to get rid of that problem. Sometimes he broke a rib or kicked a knee to bend in a way that wasn't meant for a human knee to bend. That caused more problems for them as now they had men on the floor trying to get around the ones rolling on the ground in pain. Zabuza also had another thing to worry about. He had to cover the doorway in case someone got by him and tried to use Haku against him as a hostage. So he didn't let it happen. He cut, sliced, hacked his enemies to pieces. The blood flowed and flew as the room was starting to be painted in the blood of his enemies as he was being painted in the red blood as well, making him look every bit the demon that he was nicknamed. He could smell the fear in the air as their confidence dropped. That was when they were truly dead. When you thought you were going to die and didn't fight for survival, you were as good as dead, and he could sense that in them. Some of them started to run away for help, at least the smart ones did, the rest he finished off. By the time he was done, the place looked literally like hell itself. He was breathing a little hard and his arms started to ache, but years of using his sword had made him strong enough to have kept swinging for an hour. But he had little time now. He quickly went back into his room and got the chair he had been sitting on and threw it at the large window, breaking the glass. He went over to Haku's bed and putting his sword on his back he gently picked up the boy in his arms. Zabuza had taken care to prepare Haku for travel. He immobilized him as much as he could, wrapping the boy's arms to his chest and making sure the wound was tightly bonded up too. The boy moaned a bit in pain and he was sorry for that, but they couldn't stay here anymore. He positioned him as best he could in his arms before jumping out the window and making his way to the only place he might be able to take Haku. Wave Village. Sakura wasn't sure what was going on, but there was something going on with two of her friends. Naruto and Hinata had been acting weird around each other for the past few days. Hinata would blush even more at the sight of Naruto and he would look a little sheepish around her as well. Something was up, but when she pressed them for something they wouldn't say what exactly. It was frustrating not knowing, and so she took her frustrations out on her training. She had so far mastered the water walking and was building up her chakra now, as controlling her chakra was something she had always been good at. She wanted to learn some more justice, and Kurenai was able to help her with refining her genjutsu skills, but she needed to learn a bit more. Mainly something more offensive would be helpful. Sakura had also taken to practicing with her tonfas in the woods as well. After her last training session she was tired, sweaty, and a certain tree now had pieces of the bark removed from all the hits. Her arms felt dead afterwards as she kept her wrist weights on, but it was good for her. She sighed as she sat on the ground taking a break and a nice cold drink from her canteen. She closed her eyes as she rested against the tree. All in all, this land wasn't bad, although she hoped that the village would recover. Every day she helped Tsunami with her shopping, and every day it broke a bit of her heart at seeing how the people lived. She still remembered that little girl that asked for food. Her body looked like the girl hadn't eaten much in days, and Sakura was most likely right. There was also another reason she was working so hard, mainly to try and not think about her own little problems. Mainly that she had given up on having more than a friendship with Naruto, and now the whole thing with Sasuke just left the girl feeling depressed. Maybe I should just focus more on my ninja life, Sakura sighed. Hell no. You can't give up now. I say we get stronger and then Sasuke-kun will have to notice us. Inner Sakura told her. You think that might work? Well, if we can't ask him out, he didn't say anything about asking us out, her inner self said. To Sakura that actually made a little sense, but then she had no idea what Sasuke even liked. She remembered that rumor that he liked long hair, and nearly all the girls had grown it out, Ino being one of them. But Naruto had said he liked her hair the way it was, and she had liked him a bit back then too, plus Sasuke didn't seem interesting in long hair. Now that she thought about it, she couldn't remember any girl that caught his interests. Maybe we should ask for some help. From who though? Sakura thought about it. For relationship advice, maybe Kurenai would be nice. It would be good to get another female ninja's views on it. Plus, Sakura bet that Kurenai had to have a lot more experience in this given she was an adult. But who to ask what Sasuke liked? She couldn't go right up to him and ask because she doubted he would answer, and it would be pretty silly. Maybe Naruto would know. You think? Well, he and Sasuke train a lot together, and maybe because they're boys they would share or talk about girls. Sakura doubted it, but it wasn't like she had anything else to go on, and even though Naruto and Sasuke never seemed to get along, as far as she knew, Naruto was the closest thing to a friend that Sasuke had. Sakura. Sakura was pulled out of her thoughts by the familiar stutter of her friend Hinata. She looked over to see the girl playing with her index fingers like she normally did. Hey, are you okay? Hinata asked, seeing Sakura's rather haggard look. Yeah, I'm just taking a break from training, Sakura told her. I really need to keep up with my teammates and it's not easy. Sasuke-kun's like a natural, and with Naruto's stamina and the way he works himself to death, I need to keep up or I won't be any use to them. Hinata nodded, knowing what it was like to live up to high expectations. She sat down next to the other girl. They had known each other for years, and she and Ino were the only two girls that Hinata was friends with. It was nice to have some female company at times as well. So, what's going on with you and Naruto? Sakura asked, as this was her chance to find out what was going on. Hinata blushed bright red. Oh come on, you and him have been acting all weird and the others may not notice, but I have. So come on, what's going on? You two aren't fighting or anything, are you? No, it's nothing like that, Hinata said quickly. Well come on, you might feel better if you tell me. Sakura asked her nicely. Hinata thought about it. She hadn't really talked to someone, and keeping it all in wasn't really helping her either. She eventually broke and told the other girl what had happened on the roof. You two kissed. Sakura couldn't believe it. Sure, it was an accident, but she knew of Hinata's crush on Naruto, and the girl finally got her first kiss with him. The romantic side of her was going nuts with images of the two of them in a romantic setting. But it was an accident, we even talked about it. Hinata told her. Flashback. It was the morning after the kiss, and both teens had been having trouble even looking the other in the eye. Hinata kept blushing more than usual when she locked eyes with him and felt like fainting when she thought back to Naruto's mouth on hers. Her heart would skip several beats faster, and she couldn't look at him for too long before she felt like she couldn't take any more. Naruto was kind of the same as he blushed lightly thinking back on that day. Eventually it was just getting too much and Naruto managed to catch Hinata along at the end of the day. "Hey Hinata-chan, can we talk?" Naruto asked her. Sure. Hinata wasn't able to say more than that in fear that she wouldn't be able to talk anymore. "Are you mad at me?" he asked. Huh. I mean you won't look at me or even talk to me, so I figured that you were mad," Naruto said looking down. The last thing he wanted was for Hinata of all people mad at him. If she was mad, that made it feel like he had just gotten kicked in the guts by a horse. No. I'm not mad, Naruto-kun, really. She really didn't want him to think that she was mad at him. "So then why have you been avoiding me?" Naruto wondered. Well, it's just that, when we, Hinata pushed her index fingers together trying to explain it. "Was it a bad kiss?" Naruto scratched his head. "No." Hinata instantly covered her mouth as her eyes widened. "Well, that's good," Naruto chuckled. "I hate to think it was a bad kiss, but it was a lot better than the last one I got." Hinata couldn't help but giggle at the disgusted face he made as she too remembered that day. "Hey, it's not that funny," Naruto whined. Sorry," Hinata said with a small smile. "So, it was a good kiss then?" Naruto asked as she blushed so red he thought that was a good sign. "Well, I hope this doesn't ruin our friendship. I mean, you're one of the most important people in my life." "Why, you're important to me too," Hinata said, giving a small yet warm smile. "Good then, still best friends, right?" Naruto smiled at her with his eyes closed, looking very much like the kind of smile that Kakashi gave. Although she would love to be more than friends, his friendship was something that she never wanted to lose. "Yes, still friends," she told him. End flashback. Sakura sighed hearing this. You really need to tell him how you really feel." I want to, but every time I try I just, well." Hinata trailed off. "Yeah, we all know," Sakura said to her. In a way we're the complete opposites. You can't tell the boy you like how you feel, and when I tell the boy I like, he just ignores it." Hinata hugged her head, slightly depressed now. She really did want to tell Naruto, but she just couldn't get the courage to do it. It was bad enough that he saw her training that one night, something that she was still embarrassed about and hoped that Naruto never found out that was her. Then there was the kiss, something she had dreamed of all this time and yet not exactly the magical moment she had hoped for. And Sakura, one of the girls who had come a long way since their childhood as the pink-haired friend, had the same confidence problems that Hinata had. While Hinata had gotten a bit better, Sakura was the most changed, and yet she too couldn't seem to get the boy she liked. "But you know what?" Sakura suddenly said, getting Hinata's attention. "I'm not going to give up. I know what I like and I'm going for it. Besides, if he doesn't like me, then I guess I can move on, but not until I said that I've done everything I could, and so should you." Me. Of course, you're not going to let me make an oath like that alone, are you?" Sakura smiled at her. Hinata thought about it for a moment and then nodded her head. Somehow she would find the courage to tell Naruto how she felt one day, she was sure of it. As much as this little display of kunoichi is very touching, it's making me sick to my stomach. They both jumped and got up quickly, and when they saw who it was they both froze. Standing not 10 feet away was Zabuza, and he was carrying Haku with him. Both young girls weren't sure what to do because they both knew that if this man wanted to kill them both he could do so easily. "Relax, I'm not here to fight," he said coldly to them. "Take me to Kakashi and that other woman, I want to talk terms with them." Later, Kakashi and Kurenai had just finished their talk with Zabuza. It wasn't exactly the easiest conversation as everyone was tense. When he had first shown up with Haku in his arms, both Jonin teachers were on their guard just in case. They heard what Zabuza told them about how Gato had tried to kill him and Haku and the man's plans for hiring an army to attack the town. Kakashi and Kurenai both had been paying attention to both his story and his body language. Being a ninja meant you picked up a lot of different skills, and to be a Jonin you usually had many on hand. One of them was the ways to pick up when someone was lying. Unfortunately, another trait was how to lie, and it was safe to assume that Zabuza knew how to lie and not be caught as well. It was just one of those circular logical problems that happened in the ninja world. Kakashi decided to take things at another angle. This man wouldn't come to them with such a story just to get them to lower their guard and kill them in their sleep. When you fought someone you got a good idea of the kind of person they were. Zabuza was the type to come at you head-on or even sideways, but deception like this wasn't the type of style he had. Plus Kakashi had seen the man with the boy, it was in the eyes. Zabuza actually cared what happened to Haku, which in itself was surprising to Kakashi as the stories about the man said he didn't care about anyone or anything. I guess even a demon can have a heart, Kakashi thought as he took all this in. All in all, he came to the conclusion that Zabuza wasn't lying to them, and now they may have solved one problem but now had a whole new one. So then you came to us of all people. Kakashi surmised. It's not like I had a lot of choices, Zabuza said, sounded irritated about the whole thing. Besides, I had hoped someone had some medical training to help, and I can't take Haku too far with his injury. We only have basic field training, but we'll do what we can, Kurenai told him. Zabuza nodded. It wasn't what he had hoped for, but it had been a long shot even when he made the choice. Maybe we can work out a deal, Kakashi said, thinking about it. We got a lot of enemies coming here soon and a lot of innocent people could be hurt or killed, so if you agree to help us out I can send a message to Konoha to send a medic nin here for the boy. With that he can make a full recovery. I have your word on that, Zabuza said. Kakashi nodded. Yes, we're no longer enemies it seems, so I might as well use you to help us and also help you in return. Fine, Zabuza simply said. Good, now I think we should make up a plan for the defense of the village, Kurenai said as they started to plan out what they would do. While they were planning, Naruto was looking in on Haku. The boy had been in and out of consciousness as the genin had taken turns looking after him. Hinata seemed to be helpful as she was out looking for herbs to help and had some of her healing salves. They weren't top-notch healing items, but every little bit helped. Naruto was also glad that he worked things out with Hinata. He sighed thinking about that he really needed to get over this, it was just a kiss, right? Okay, so it was his first girl kiss and it hadn't been bad or nothing, it was just that she had been his best friend for so long he didn't think of her as a girl in that way. Okay, she was cute but she would never think of him in that way, would she? Plus he was still haunted by that girl on the water, he couldn't stop thinking about her, hell he was still having dreams about that girl. Naruto just sighed thinking that life was just way too complicated these days. You look really serious at the moment, you know that. A soft voice spoke up. Huh, hey you're awake, Naruto smiled at the boy. He looked a little pale and weak but so far Haku looked like he was doing better. You look pretty good for a guy who had a hole put into his chest, you're lucky my dad pulled away at the last moment or you really would be dead. Yes, I'm surprised I lived, Haku had been in and out of it for days. He was surprised that Zabuza had kept him and was caring for him, he was just a tool wasn't he? Yeah well it looks like Zabuza was taking good care of you and we made a deal with Konoha to send to a medic team. My dad plans to send one of his ninja dogs with a message later today with what's going on. He would have sent it sooner but he didn't want a team to be jumped by more forces. He had heard how Kakashi explained that he was unwilling to put others into more danger. They were two full teams, granted only genin teams, but he had no way of knowing if Zabuza would have been patrolling the route to the village or any other forces that Gato had. Now with Zabuza on their side for the time being, they had enough intelligence for Kakashi to give that to the Hokage so the team on the way would be able to avoid any dangers. Haku was silent a moment as he stared up at the ceiling. What's wrong? Naruto asked. I'm not sure why I'm still alive, I'm just a broken tool now. I'm worthless to him, so why did he save me? Haku asked, confused. You know that kind of talk really pisses me off, Naruto told the boy. I mean we're people first and if you really want to know it's that he cares about you. I don't know exactly how things are but you know in a really weird and strange way it's kind of like he's your dad. Haku's eyes widened quickly at that. His own father had tried to kill him and ended up killing his own mother. Oh come on, the guy took you in, trained you and raised you, Naruto said smiling. You want to know a secret? Kakashi did the same thing to me, so in a way we're both the same. Haku looked at the masked boy as he thought about it. It was a strange concept to think of Zabuza as a father figure but not an unpleasant one. In fact he had more memories of Zabuza than he had of his own family. And when he looked into the eyes of the boy next to him he could see that his eyes were very familiar. They were eyes that knew loss, pain and yet what it was like to be taken in as well. You have someone precious to protect, don't you? Haku asked him. Naruto was taken aback from the question. Yeah, I got lots of people. I mean there's my dad, the old man, then I got a few crazy people that I like to call my aunt and uncle, my friends and Hinata-chan. Haku smiled at that. That's good to know. You know true power comes from the need to protect those precious to you, that's where real strength comes from, and with so many people to protect I can see that you'll get very strong. Heh, Naruto laughed, rubbing the back of his head. Thanks. So, can you tell me more? I never really got to talking with others before, Haku asked him. Naruto nodded as he started up with his life, then went into his family and friends and even his best memories of them as well. Haku told him about the Mist Village and his life on the road with Zabuza, well, the good parts and not the missions. Overall it was a good time for both young boys, and both felt that they had met someone that could understand them in ways that others couldn't, even if they didn't totally understand it themselves. They were still talking when Kiba came in to relieve Naruto, but the boy just said he had it covered. Kiba shrugged as it meant some free time for him, so he was all for it. He just got them some lunch and that was it. It was weird as how Haku had not that long ago been their enemy, and there was Naruto making friends like the boy was an old friend. Kiba had to admit that Naruto had a talent for making friends. He still remembered the day he met the blonde at the academy. That had been a rocky start, but later Kiba thought he was a good guy, but there was still Zabuza. Now that was one scary guy, and he wasn't sure he could even sleep comfortably knowing that guy was around. He could already tell that it was going to be a long night tonight, plus from what they had heard from Kurenai, Gato was about to attack very soon as well. Man, when it rains it pours, it seems, Kiba thought as he wondered what he could do to kill a few hours. Chapter 40, Gato's Attack. The ninja were gathered around Tazuna and his family's dinner table as they were setting up their plans to defend the village. There were many little things to represent certain buildings or areas of the village as they planned it out. Kakashi and Kurenai had to admit it was strange working with Zabuza, but the man knew the kind of people that Gato had, and so far the plan was looking good. So then we're in agreement on the plan, Kakashi said, looking it over one last time and then looked to Zabuza. You're sure the attack will be today? Not all the way, but given that he tried to have me killed with Haku says he's ready, the former Mist Ninja said. As the adults were talking, the genin were already preparing in another room. Team 7 was told to get rid of the weights on their wrists and ankles so that they would be able to move more freely and not to hamper their speed. While doing this, both teams were preparing in different ways. Shino was communing with his bugs to help with planning out the possible things that could happen to them. Hinata was busy ensuring that her healing supplies were well stocked up as well in case anyone got injured, as well as the few medical supplies they were keeping here as well. Kiba was looking over his equipment with Akamaru asking the dog questions, mostly about which pills the dog felt he could handle if they were needed. Team 7 was doing the same, although they were also looking over their weapons as well. Sakura was polishing her metal tonfas, checking for any weakness in the metal that could make the weapon break just in case. Naruto and Sasuke were working on their swords as well. The atmosphere was pretty tense as no one was saying anything. For Team 8 this would be their first major battle. Kiba was actually looking forward to it, while Hinata was a bit more nervous, and Shino, well, it was hard to tell with him what he was feeling. Team 7 had been through something like this before, sure not as big as this, but they were preparing themselves for the battle ahead. Inari had been nervous about the whole thing, although lately he had been thinking on things. Seeing kids, not much older than him, preparing for battle was a little unsettling. He saw Naruto taking care of a sword with great care as the younger boy came closer to take a good look at it. Naruto couldn't help but smile behind his mask at the boy's interest and looked at him. Like it. It looks pretty cool, but it looks different than Sasuke's. Inari told him. Yeah, it's a chakra blade. It actually can channel chakra from the user. This belonged to my grandfather and then my father, and now it's mine. It served the Hitaki family for 3 generations and now it's my turn to carry it. Naruto told him, and he was proud to wield this blade. There was an untold amount of history with it, and now it was his turn to add to that history. Inari looked at the blade, his eyes widening a bit more at the thought of the sword being in use for so long. It didn't look that old, plus there was no damage on the blade either. Then he looked back to Naruto again. Why are you guys doing this? I mean, you don't have to risk your lives for us. Because it's the right thing to do. We were hired to protect your grandfather, but we're taking a little leeway with our mission. In a way we're still protecting him, but now we're just expanding how. I figure with Gato gone he'll be pretty well protected, and if the village is safer for it, then that's one hell of a nice bonus, right? At least that's what I think my dad plans on telling to Hokage to explain all of this. Naruto gave the boy a wink to let him know the meaning behind his words. Inari could only give a small smile knowing that the boy really meant. Bridge. It was later in the day when Tazuna and his people were working on the bridge. So far things were going well and in a week the bridge should be finished. It was like a dream come true. One of if not the largest overwater bridge was nearing completion and soon the village would have a direct trade route to the mainland for the first time ever. They wouldn't need to rely on shipping companies like Gato's anymore. Now trade caravans could make their way into the village on their own for once, and since the bridge belonged to the village no company had any rights to it. That meant that Gato couldn't sink his claws into it like he had with many other businesses in their land, which was slowly choking his village into a slow death. Although he knew that plan, that didn't mean he wasn't nervous about all of this. There was just a lot riding on this and the waiting was nerve-wracking for the old man as well. He sighed as he gave out orders to the workers. They may be the bait for this trap, but there was still a bridge to build and no matter what he wasn't losing any time. It wasn't until one of the workers came up behind him. "Hey Tazuna, I think we have company." Tazuna turned around and there he could see a group of people walking towards them. He could see Gato out in front and his blood ran cold at the sight of the man. Normally he wasn't one to hate another person, but in Gato's case he made an exception. This man had caused untold amounts of pain to his village and family. There was nothing more he would love to see than that man to get what was coming to him. Gato stopped a few yards away with a grin on his face looking over the bridge. "It seems you never learned, do you Tazuna? I would have thought my demonstration in town with that boy of yours would have stopped you from this foolishness. You were also lucky to make it back, but this ends here, old man. Once you're gone I'm going to demolish this bridge and then the village will serve as an example for others. But first, where are those Konoha ninja?" Gato looked around but saw only construction workers. Tazuna gave a small smile that left Gato confused. "All around you," Tazuna said. All the workers turned into puffs of smoke as they turned into Team 7, with the majority of them being shadow clones of Naruto who had put them into a henge. There was also Zanbuza as well, grinning almost evilly under his bandages. In fact, with the amount of killing intent he was giving off, even those on his side were giving him some space. Gato looked at the ninja in front of him. He hadn't planned on them being here, let alone Zabuza being here. Gato had thought the man when he heard the news of his escape would be on the run. Not once did he think he would actually join the other ninja. It was obvious he was worried from the look on his face, but he still had on a sly grin on his face. "You think you're all so smart? Well, by this time the village will be having a surprise with all of the rest of my men. I thought I had cowed this village, but I guess they needed a reminder. Maybe if I take a member of each family they'll learn their lesson, and I doubt the old fool can live with that kind of blood being spilled, am I right?" Tazuna looked a bit sickened at the thought. It was bad enough what had happened to his son-in-law, but he knew that Gato wasn't bluffing. The man was the kind that could do something like that and not even lose a bit of sleep over it. "You're a bigger fool than I thought," Zabuza said to him. "You honestly think all of the Konoha ninja are here?" Back in the village, the men that Gato hired started to terrorize the village. You could hear the shouts and cries of panic as the criminals busted into homes or businesses. The people were running in the streets and some of men were carrying or dragging people into the streets, but thankfully Team 8 was on the job to protect the village. Kiba was with Akamaru on a rooftop as he saw a few men dragging out a family. As an Inuzuka, he, like the rest of his clan, had strong ties to their families, so seeing one being attacked only made him angry. "Let's go, Akamaru," he said, giving the small dog a special pill of his. The puppy ate it and his fur turned red as he took on a more vicious look. Kiba got on all fours as his dog jumped onto his back. "Beast human clone jutsu," Kiba said as both he and Akamaru transformed. Kiba's nails and fangs grew out, giving him a slightly feral look as Akamaru turned into an exact copy. It was a clan jutsu that made their dogs take on the forms of their owners, and a bit of their dogs went into them, enhancing them. "Fang over fang," Kiba cried out as they both jumped into the air and starting to spin. They looked like two mini tornadoes as they flew into the group of thugs. The men scattered as they were hit by the Inuzuka team, their bodies covered in claw marks. Shino was in another part of the town as he calmly looked over the scene. Earlier he had used his bugs to mark all the civilians in the town with a special pheromone so his bugs would know who to protect and who to hurt. He raised his arms as swarms of black insects flew out over his area of the town. the criminals soon found themselves being covered in his bugs as they ate their chakra. It only lasted a moment, but the men fell to the ground too weak to move. He recalled his bugs to him and moved on to another section to defend. Kurenai ended up trapping her opponents in mass illusions. She wasn't as kind as her students as she slowly took out the hired criminals. They made them see their allies as enemies, and she watched coldly and calmly as they killed their comrades, not knowing the truth. When there was one left, she easily came up behind him and slit his throat. Some may see what she did as cold and unfair, but she was a ninja and at times things needed to get this dirty in order to win and protect others. After she was done like the rest, she went in search of others. Hinata felt nervous. She never was one for violence, but she knew what would happen if she did nothing. She still remembered how she froze in her first battle. She had done better the next time, but this time there was a whole village to protect. She found a couple of hired swords chasing two children for fun apparently. She jumped down in front of the men who looked on in amusement. "Why you will leave them in this village alone," she told them, although she wished she hadn't stuttered or had put more force into her voice. The men just laughed at her and told her that she should have stayed home playing with her dolls. Hinata readied herself as she activated her bloodline. She could see their chakra paths and they would learn that she may be the most gentle of the Hyuga clan. She was in no means not a threat. They came in at her and they were surprised by the speed and agility she was showing by twisting out of their attacks. Her hands with lightning speed struck at their key chakra points. In a matter of seconds she had them both on the ground, unable to move. She cast a quick look to see the children had run off and she wished them well. A loud sound caught her attention as her eyes picked up more trouble a few blocks down as she ran towards it. In another part of the village at Tazuna's home, his daughter and grandson could hear the sounds of the battle. Tsunami was worried, not only for her village but for her grandfather and the ninja he had hired. Inari looked up at his mother and he could see that she was worried sick. He on the other hand had a newfound faith in Naruto and his friends. "It will be okay, Mom," Inari told her, and she gave a small smile. "I'm going to check on Haku, okay?" The small boy went up the stairs to where the injured ninja was still recovering. He looked in bad shape to the young boy and couldn't help but wonder at times how the older boy managed to hang on with a wound like that. He entered the door to see that Haku was asleep again. There was still some food left and he reached down to take it so it wouldn't spoil when he heard the commotion downstairs. There was the sound of the door being forced open and his mother's scream. He heard the sounds of unfamiliar men's voices. There were the sounds of struggling and Inari ran downstairs. He saw the mess of the kitchen from the overturned table but he didn't see anyone. Then the sounds he noticed again were outside this time, and so he ran out fearing for his mother. As soon as he got out the door he saw two men had his mother. "Mom!" Inari yelled out, trying to run to her, but he had been in such a hurry he hadn't noticed a man had been by the door. He felt a strong hand grip him by the back of his neck as he tried in vain to thrash out of it. "Inari, please don't hurt him," Tsunami told their captors. "Sorry lady, but the boss says the old bridge builder is to pay for getting in the way. You and the kid are going to be the message," one of the men holding her told her without a hint of remorse at all. The other one leered at her, thinking, "You know the boss didn't say when to kill them and she's kind of pretty. You think he'd mind if we had some fun with her before we do her and the kid in? Leave her alone," Inari shouted out as one of the men licked the side of her face. The men laughed, but suddenly the one holding Inari gave a grunt as his body jerked and then fell forward. The last two men were stunned seeing their comrade fall down with a slim metallic object dug into the base of his skull at the neck. Everyone looked up to see a very haggard-looking Haku there. He was barely standing up and he looked like he was in pain with the effort, with a modified sling holding his arm. Haku had woken up from the noise and it had been a major effort to even get this far. But these people had helped him when he had tried to kill a member of their own family. He felt that he owed a department for this family, plus he liked them as well. "Who the hell are you?" one of the men demanded. "Your death," Haku said simply, and with his good hand threw the two senbons at the other men, both hitting them in the side of their eye as the small metal weapons impeded into their brains, killing them instantly. Haku lost any strength he had left and sank to his knees, unable to even stand up anymore. Tsunami and Inari ran to the boy as the woman helped to keep the young man upright. "What are you doing out of bed? You could have been killed," Tsunami said, even though she was so grateful for the boy's help with his injury. Haku gave a small smile. "I know, but I had to help for all the kindness you've shown me." I'm more surprised you can even stand, Inari said to the pale-looking boy. Haku gave a small smile, you know the secret to true strength. When you have something precious to you to protect, that's what gives you the strength to carry on no matter what. Inari instantly thought back to his father, he thought back to that horrible day when he had seen him killed in front of the entire village. There had never been any fear in his eyes, in fact in one moment he had locked eyes with Inari and he had actually smiled. Inari didn't understand it then how his father could have endured all of that and why he fought Gato. But after what Haku said, maybe that was the reason why his father had never given up. His father had never given in no matter what Gato's men had done to him. And now there was Naruto and his team and friends defending their village without showing the same fear. Inari then remembered how he had been acting since his father's death and he felt ashamed. His father wouldn't want him to be like that and thinking about his father he knew what he had to do. Inari got up and started running to the house. Inari, what are you doing? Tsunami asked her son. Something I should have done a while ago. Inari told her getting the supplies he needed. The village for too long had been cowed under Gato's power but he was just one man. There were kids not much older than him putting their lives on the line for his village and how can they hold their heads up with pride if the village not once even tried to help. It was time for the village to get its pride and its honor back and he knew the way to do it. Bridge. Back on the bridge Zabuza was hefting his large sword preparing to hack to pieces as many men as he had to get at Gato. The rest of the ninja team looked just as ready as well, there were a lot of them but they were just mercenaries. A ninja was far more deadly than any mercenary although with the numbers they had it would give them a bit of pause. But only for a bit, Kakashi and Zabuza were there up front as both men readied themselves for the battle. Team 7 you know the plan, we're frontal assault. Naruto and Sasuke you're the middle and Sakura you're our defender for those that slip past. Kakashi ordered out calmly. Team 7 went into action as the boys drew their swords spacing out to be on the outside while Sakura was centered in the formation at the back to protect Tazuna. They made a diamond-shaped formation as they waited for the mercenaries to charge, they didn't have to wait long. The men charged at them figuring with their numbers they didn't have anything to fear. Zabuza and Kakashi showed them otherwise as they started to cut into the mercenaries. Zabuza like before used his massive blade to cut a bloody path of death through them, although the plan was for him and Kakashi to thin the group he still wanted to get at Gato. Kakashi had a kunai in each hand as he preferred to use his quickness and agility when fighting, he moved through the enemies dodging their attacks and using fatal counters. Naruto and Sasuke gave each other a small look. Naruto grinned under his mask and gave the Uchiha a silent challenge. Sasuke noticed this and gave his usual smirk and got himself ready. Both boys had killed before and although Sasuke had an easier time he was remembering Kakashi's words to him earlier. Naruto was doing the same, he was controlling his breathing and preparing himself to kill again. He didn't want to but he was a ninja now. He would feel bad later at the moment he had people to defend and his team needed him. Soon the men came through the holes in Zabuza and Kakashi's line. The boys were ready as they used their swords to deal with the enemies that came at them. Naruto had created a few clones to help with the defensive lines. He wished he could use his exploding clones but he didn't think Tazuna would appreciate the holes in the bridge. And his wind elements wouldn't really be good in tight quarters with allies so close, the same could use said with Sasuke as his fire techniques as well so the plan called for swords. Sakura waited in her position, although a part of her hated being in the back they had to protect Tazuna. Plus she wasn't all that eager to go into a killing field, she had gotten over her first kill mostly but she didn't want to do it anytime soon. She watched as Naruto and Sasuke were in the heat of battle using their swords to injure, incapacitate and even kill again. She swallowed hard trying to put those thoughts aside, the mission came first. She recalled the lessons in class about putting your emotions aside in a fight in order to get through it. Soon a few men had managed to break through the second line of defense and were heading towards her. Most likely they viewed her as the least threatening. She remembered how Anko told her that because of her looks most would assume she wouldn't be much a threat. Remember Sakura, you're not exactly the most intimidating looking ninja so they'll take it easy the trick is to use it. If they make the mistake of thinking you're soft and easy then you have to make them pay for it. You'll only get a small opening before they realize the truth so hit them hard and fast kid. Sakura nodded to herself, remembering Anko's words while she had been training under her in the use of the tonfas. The men came as her and Sakura could see them relax just like Anko said they would. She waited until they were close and then she unleashed her full fury. Without her weights she was much faster and she hit a hell of a lot harder as well. Cold metal soon met flesh or the metal of their blades. Sakura would feel or even hear bones cracking and breaking as he hit the weakest areas of their bodies. She broke their ribs, joints, and the few times she got in a shot at the face, their teeth and noses. It was hard work, but thankfully Naruto had seen how many were getting through and sent a few of his clones as backup. She was thankful for that and made a mental note that when they got out of this, whenever she gained enough chakra, she would ask him if he could teach her that move. Having an extra hand here and there was very useful, but now was the time to concentrate on making sure they did survive this day. Gato saw which way the battle was going after a while. He had thought that the ninja would be too busy protecting the village. His plan to keep them busy with the village as he killed Tazuna was ruined now. Without the client, the ninja would have no reason to stay, and as soon as they left, the remainder of his men were to come back then. Now he would have to flee while he could and hope there was enough men left to start on a new plan. He turned around to get off the bridge but stopped when saw what was coming towards him on the other side. There was a group of people coming his way, but they weren't his men, they were the village, and Team 8 was leading the way. While Team 7 had been busy, Inari had managed to gather up the villagers. After they had seen how Team 8 was fighting for them and some choice words from Inari, the villagers had finally managed to find the courage to stand up to Gato. Those that could fight gathered what they could and went to help Team 8, and with their help they quickly managed to wipe up the rest of Gato's men. After they were done, Kurenai led them as quickly as they could to the bridge to see if Kakashi's team would need any help. By the time they got there, they could see that Gato's men were in trouble and the man himself was trying to get away. Gato backed up a few steps as the people were getting closer. Gato was thinking that there had to be a way out of this, maybe he could bargain with them, it was worth a shot. Although by the looks of the villagers he was starting to doubt that, he still couldn't believe that things had gotten so bad. Kurenai was in the lead as the villagers were halted a few yards from Gato. "Gato, you have serious crimes to pay for," Kurenai said to him. "Murder, extortion, and violence, just to name a few. Go ahead and arrest me then." Gato grinned as he found his way out. With his money and resources he could buy his freedom. Sure, it wouldn't be cheap and he might do some jail time, but nothing too bad, and he could use the time to plan his revenge as well. "Sorry, but I'm not letting you off that easy," a familiar voice said, making Gato break out in fear as he turned around. To the man's horror, there was Zabuza running towards him. The ninja's eyes were like a blazing fury of hellfire as he came at the man. "No one tries and double-cross me, Gato, and it's time for this demon to send you to hell." Zabuza yelled out as his blade came down and literally cut Gato in half. It was a gruesome scene to most there that weren't used to such violence. Hinata felt sick just looking at it. Shino didn't say anything, but even he had a shocked expression on his face. Kiba was at a loss for words for a moment as he stared at the bloody mess that used to be a person. "Oh man, that was the most brutal thing I've ever seen," Kiba muttered to himself. After seeing their boss killed, the few remaining hired men decided to hope for mercy and surrender.